Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there. A couple of reminders and announcements before we dive into today's episode. First announcement is I will be having a webinar on the 27th of August for estranged parents who have estranged adult children who identify as a member of the LGBTQ plus community. If you are struggling with having a child who identifies as this or a part of this community and would like some support around that, some understanding, some education around that in a safe and supportive environment, please feel free to email me at TheEstrangedHeart@gmail.com, or you can search through Eventbrite for that webinar as well. And it's also posted on all of my social media. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. That again will be on Sunday, August the 27th. And I think as the other reminder I wanted to give out is that the retreat is forthcoming the end of September, first part of October in Washington State. Stay tuned for more of that, more information to come on that. And finally, again, the doors for registration for the third annual Moving Beyond Family Struggles Summit is open now for registration, and feel free to find information about that in the show notes as well. I will be a part of that summit with 29 other estrangement and reconciliation experts in the field. So it's a wonderful event to be a part of. And so if you're interested in that, it is free and it is online. It will be October 12th through the 15th over the course of 4 days. So again, the link to register for that event will be in the show notes. So I hope you will register and join us. And I think that is all for today. So on to today's episode. Today's episode is coming after having met recently with several estranged adult children. And I'm hoping that it will provide some insight for estranged parents and especially estranged moms in navigating some of the questions that they have, the unknowns, the I don't understands, etc. Because these are running themes that I hear anytime I talk with estranged adult children. And I'm hoping to be able to shed some light on those things and share some empathy with you as a mom myself, as a formerly estranged mom, and that I get it and I understand the frustration, I understand the sadness and the grief, and I also understand from the estranged adult child's perspective as well where they are coming from. So I'm hoping I can do this justice by trying to balance out both sides of this coin. So one of the things that seems to be a reoccurring common thread with estranged adult children when it comes to their estranged parents is the violation of boundaries and consistency. Um, this is obviously for the parents who have had some sort of contact with their adult child. they have some sort of knowledge regarding why the estrangement occurred, or at least at a minimum, they've been told what boundaries are in place, and then continue to violate those boundaries in some form or fashion. I know that as a parent, boundaries can seem, well, number one, they can be off putting because we are used to being the manager in the relationship. We are used to being the one to impose rules and regulations, and it will be this way and not that way. So when our adult children, when that role is somewhat reversed and our adult children begin acting as a manager within the relationship, it's it's unsettling. We don't know what to do with that. It's very foreign. It's change, and as most human beings, we typically resist and or fight change. So when we have spent 18, 25, 30 years managing our children, to then have that turned around and we are then managed by the imposing of boundaries by our adult children, we don't know what to do with that. I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't do a whole lot of that with my parents. I mean, I did as I got a little bit older and began pushing back on some things, but for most parents, they're not accustomed to that. So when the kid comes and says, "Listen, I only want communication this way and not, this the other ways," right? So maybe they want communication only by text and not by phone or email, or they want it only by email and not by text and phone. And then we, out of habit, pick up the phone and text them, or we pick up and email them when they've asked not to be emailed, etc. Generally, it's I communication can be by email, but not text and phone. So I'll use that as an example. So when we text them and call them, it they they act like parents do. Like, "Oh my gosh, I have given you this rule and you have broken it." And instead of being as parents can be to small children, instead of saying, go to your room, you can't have friends over, you can't watch TV for a week, etc., etc., the way they impose punishment, if you will, is by starting the clock over and or blocking the one form of communication you did have, or by going into full-blown estrangement. And while I do not subscribe that adult children are punishing their children I'm sorry, their parents intentionally. I don't like the word. I don't think that estrangement is a punishment. I think estrangement is a call to action. It is a indicator that things have gone terribly wrong within the parent and adult child relationship, and it is a warning flash of something has to change so we can get back together, right? It's a flashpoint, if you will. So every time we cross this a boundary, the adult child is left with this, okay, you've crossed this boundary, you've violated this rule in essence, and so here's here is what happens. We go back to the beginning. We start over. The time clock starts over again. So if we pull back and look at this from the broader perspective, I'm always talking about estrangement being two sides of the same coin. And the longer I have been doing this work, the more that I realize it actually is almost like a role reversals, right? in that we as parents control every aspect of our child's life for so many years, up to and including young adulthood for some people, myself included in that, that to break free from it, it's so ingrained in us and we do it so unconsciously that to break free from that, a lot of the estranged adult children have to do something very drastic to get our attention. That was what was told to me by my kids. We tried everything and nothing worked, so this was the only option left, right? So your children are trying to tell you something. Oftentimes it's they don't want to be managed anymore. They want they want you to move from that manager role into the role of a consultant where they can want to have you in their life. They enjoy having you in their life because they know they're not going to get a lecture. They're not going to get told, I think you should be doing this, that, or the other thing, or receive judgment on a decision that they've made, etc. And so they can do that when they can want you in their life when you are a consultant versus that manager, right? So when we violate those boundaries, it really is a becomes a trust thing for them. Every time a boundary is violated, the trust is broken again. And I talk about this often with my coaching clients in that we are rebuilding trust. Anytime you have to move from estrangement and you're moving towards reconciliation, that is the process. You're moving to rebuild trust. And the way to rebuild trust is to show consistency. And the very first thing you can show consistency in is honoring of boundaries, right? As discomforting as it can be to you, as anxiety provoking as it can be for you, as awful and sad and all the things it can be to you, those are things that we need to deal with as parents on for ourselves and allow our children to have the space that they need. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Is it hurtful? Absolutely. Is it painful? Yes, yes, yes. So, so painful. Like one of the things that I hear a lot, and I know it was a huge thing for me when I went through my estrangement, especially as moms, I think, or the main caregiver for the children, is not knowing if they are okay, meaning the adult child, is not knowing, are they safe? Are they okay? Are they alive? Right? I remember many times thinking that when I was in my estrangement experience. I don't know if they're alive, if they're dead, if they're laying on the side of the road somewhere, if they're hurt, if somebody's hurting them. I can't run and save them. Right? Now, most times, the majority of times, they are fine. There is not anything catastrophic that has happened in their life. But we are so used to managing every aspect of their lives, we don't know how to respond and react when we don't have that control. And when we are in fear, most people who are in a fear state turn to control in order to manage their own anxieties, etc. So we get into that place of fear. Is my kid okay? Is my kid safe? Is my kid alive? And we fall back to texting in an effort to get some sort of response, right? To calm our fears. Yet at the same time, we have just violated a boundary that has been imposed upon us. And again, we can try to spin it because I know I did, and I know I'm not the only one. We can try to spin it, well, I'm just concerned about them. I'm a worried parent, etc., etc. When in reality, what we are doing on some level is manipulating them or trying to so that we can get a response, right? And that response is, again, to calm our own fears, our own anxieties, etc., when we really need to be doing that in other ways. We're relying on our kid to basically, on some level, carry our emotional baggage. Our emotional baggage meaning our emotional concern. I'm concerned about my kid, right? Are they okay? Things like that. So we would be better served is to learn how to manage those anxieties, those fears of our own in healthy and productive ways that we have control over, not through the control or manipulation of someone else. And we can try to spin it because I did. So don't come at me with this. I did. I gave all the excuses. Well, I'm the mom and I'm concerned and I love them and I care about them. And what mom wouldn't want to hear from their child to know that they're okay, and all the things you can say, all the things. But in reality, this is what it comes down to. We are trying on some level to control our kids. And our kids are saying, I'm done with the control. I'm done with you being the manager of my life. I am the manager of my life. And maybe that's the piece of it for us that is so unsettling, is that we are not the managers of our own life. Maybe we are the people pleasing person who is always running around trying to please everybody else because we don't feel like we are accepted or will be accepted if we don't please everybody else, if we stand up and say what we feel, or etc., right? That someone will reject us. And that is something that a lot of estranged moms are impacted by. And I know, again, because that impacted me in my estrangement, is wanting to people please so that I would be accepted because I had been rejected by my children. And so I went into people pleasing mode a lot at work. And I ended up suffering tremendously because of that down the road in my career. Personally, meaning health wise and things like that. It really, on my mental health, my physical health, all of it wreaked havoc because I went into that people pleasing place. So when our children are placing boundaries around their needs, they are taking care of themselves, right? If you can try to do that quarter turn, to try to see it from their perspective, right? And like, Dr. Coleman talks about finding that kernel of truth, but also knowing that for the most part, the majority of adult children who estrange, they're not doing it as any sort of punishment. They're doing it out of self-preservation, right? AC has talked about that on this podcast, that sometimes we have to take a step back in order to self-preserve, self-protect until we can sort through some things and figure some things out and come to a different conclusion. And that time frame in sorting things out and coming to a different conclusion is not on the time frame of the parent, it is on the time frame of the adult child. And just because for us we're like every moment feels like an eternity, it does not feel that way for the estranged adult children for the most part. And so they are much more apt and able to handle time and distance for longer periods of time, longer distances, etc., than we are. This is where your inner work on yourself comes into play, and working to have a life of your own that is defined by the things that you enjoy and not defined by your children, right? Yes, we enjoy our children. Yes, we enjoy our grandchildren, but those should not define our lives. It's the same thing if a person is defined by their career. Yeah, it works great for the employer. The employer's like, yes, I have a dedicated employee doing all the things I want them to do all the time, right? And our kids, and meanwhile, the employee is like, my God, you are sucking the life out of me, right? And our kids feel the same way when we identify so much of ourselves through them as parents, through us, as parents, when we're relying on them to meet our needs, fulfill what we need in life. We need to be giving that to ourselves and not relying on our careers to do it, not relying on our children to do it, etc. So it's a heavy load to carry as an adult child when you feel like, and especially as you they begin having children of their own and trying to balance out being a parent and then having to carry the emotional um, life of a parent and their own life, it becomes too much. I just concluded working with one formerly estranged mom. She's now back reconciled with her estranged adult child. And even her non estranged adult child tells her now that they really enjoy just being with her, right? Instead of out of feeling a sense of obligation. Oh, yeah, I need to, it's Sunday afternoon. I got to go to mom's, or I've got to call mom, or whatever. And the word got to. So that estranged, that non-estranged adult child now tells the mom, man, it's so nice to just spend time with you these days. You've changed so much. And they don't know that she was in coaching with me. She did not share that with them, but they have noticed the change that she has made. She is more present for them. She does not require them to carry her emotional load. She carries that on her own. She has her own outlets and her own way of doing those things. And so she, in essence, is honoring boundaries of adult children without adult children having to place those boundaries now. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. So, in closing for today, I wanted to just give this as a second, thought to maybe look at boundaries a little differently than how we're accustomed to looking at them, as these punishments and these, horrible, awful things, and instead begin to look at them through a different lens, from a different perspective, so that you can help yourself as well as your adult child. And when you show up consistently and honor those boundaries, that you are in the process of rebuilding trust at that point in time. And that consistency has to happen every single day, every single time, regardless of the fluctuations in our emotional world, right? So just because it's Tuesday and you feel the need to reach out to your adult child because you haven't heard from them in 3 months, your estranged adult child, and you're just going to send them a text in hopes of getting a response back, maybe that's not the thing to do if that's a boundary they have placed, right? Give them what they are asking for. Now, this is different if your estranged adult child has not formally given you a list of boundaries, or things, or stated any sort of boundary in any way. It might apply if they have implied by blocking you on everything. Maybe they've not said and listed their boundaries outright, but they have blocked you in every form or fashion, right? Then that is a boundary. Okay. So be mindful of that. And even if your estranged adult child has not actually listed boundaries, be thinking about the ways that you have managed your child as a parent, and when they were in their childhoods and maybe in young adulthood, begin thinking about the ways that you have managed them instead of being a consultant for them, right? And how can you move towards the consultant role and out of the manager role? That's really what they're asking for. So I hope this has been a bit helpful. There are a few other things that from my conversations with estranged adult children as of late that I want to expand upon and bring more into the conversation. And we'll probably do that over a period of several episodes, like maybe a series of episodes. But this is one that was calling to me today, and I hope that it has been helpful for you. If you have any questions and would like additional information regarding my coaching services, please feel free to email me at TheEstrangedHeart@gmail.com. And at the same time, if you would like, you have questions that you want answered on the podcast, please send those along too. You can email those. And again, that contact information will be in the show notes. So I hope that you'll take this information and hold it close to your heart, sit with it for a bit of time, and know that you're not alone. Boundaries, when we're not used to that, it's shocking, it hurts, it's feels like a punishment, but I'm here to tell you it really isn't a punishment. The kids are doing it for a reason, and that reason is for their own mental health and trying to get their life on track in a way that they want it on track, right? So when we can show up for them, honoring their boundaries and being consistent with that, we begin to rebuild that trust that has disintegrated in some way, and we can begin working our way back to our kids. Until next time. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.